This is the second part of History Class 10, Chapter 1, The Rise of Nationalism in Europe. In this video, our topic is the making of nationalism in Europe. In mid-18th century, there were no national states in Europe. A nation-state is a country, or any country in which all the people follow a common language, a common culture, and a common identity. Today, all countries like Germany, France, Hungary, and India are nation-states. But during mid-18th century Europe, countries like Germany, Italy, and Switzerland were divided into kingdoms, duchies, and cantons. Under the monarchy, in each part of Europe, diverse people lived, who belonged to different ethnic groups. They spoke different languages. They did not share common culture or a collective identity. We can take the example of Habsburg Empire. The Habsburg Empire was one of the largest empires in the world that ruled over Austria and Hungary. In the Habsburg Empire, people spoke different languages like Polish, German, and French. There were several different ethnic groups such as Bohemians, Slovenes, Croats, and Romans. So, Habsburg was a patchwork of many different regions and peoples. Such differences could not promote a sense of unity and equality. So how did nationalism and the idea of the nation-state emerge in Europe? The aristocracy and the new middle class. During the 18th century, there were mainly two social groups that lived in Europe, the aristocracy and the peasantry. Aristocracy was the dominant class in Europe. Though they were small in numbers, they were the most respected and wealthy people in the society. They spoke French and were united by a common way of life. They were also united with ties of marriage to each other. Thus, the aristocracy was politically powerful, but they were in the minority. Next, peasantry. The majority of the population was peasants. They were in the majority, but they did not have power. Most of them were landless. They worked for others in their fields. Now in the 18th century, when the Industrial Revolution began in England and other European countries, industrialization gave birth to new social groups, known as the middle class. This middle class was the people who were not very rich or very poor, but they were educated, they were businessmen, they were industrialists and professionals. So the idea of nationalism, the idea of unity or nation-state first gained popularity among the educated middle class. The middle class believed that the people of same culture, same traditions, and same language should live together. And another concept they believed in was liberal nationalism. What is liberal nationalism? The term liberalism derives from the Latin word libere, meaning free. For the new middle classes, liberalism stood freedom for the individual and equality of all before the law. During the French Revolution, liberalism stood for the end of autocracy and the privileges given to the clergy. The privileges by birth should be ended. Liberals also believed in a parliamentary form of government, so the middle class was struggling with these issues. But the concept of equality before the law did not stand for universal suffrage, means everyone did not get the right of voting. Men without property and all women were excluded from political rights. Only under the Jacobin government, adult males, rich or poor, got voting rights. Under Napoleon's government, men without property were excluded from voting rights. Women were considered to be under the authority of their fathers until they got married. Once they were married, they were then under the authority of their husbands. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, women and all the men without property struggled for equal political rights. In the economic sphere, liberalism stood for the freedom of markets. During the 19th century, the tax system was another problem for the growing middle class. There were restrictions on the movement of goods and capital. If a merchant had to travel from Hamburg to Nuremberg to sell his goods, he would have had to pass through 11 customs barriers, and at each one of them, he had to pay a customs duty of about 5%. As each region had its system of weights, measures, and currency, the trader had to change the currency each time. So to create a free trade area, in 1834, a customs union or Zollverein was formed by Prussia and later joined by most of the German states. Zollverein was the first international trade agreement that abolished trade barriers and reduced the number of currencies from over 30 to 2. So by this movement, the free trade area was created throughout Germany. The Union successfully decreased the number of currencies from over 30 to 2 and abolished the trade barriers. And Zollverein was also seen as an important step in German reunification. A new conservative after 1850, we know about Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte took power in France in 1799. He ruled France for 15 years. In 1815, Napoleon was defeated by four major powers, Britain, Russia, Austria, and Prussia, in Waterloo. The war is known as the Battle of Waterloo. After the defeat of Napoleon, the ruler of Britain, Russia, and Australia and Russia were conservative. They didn't want any radical change in society. They were the people who supported monarchy and nobility. They believed that the privileges of the monarchy and nobility should exist. They wanted to undo all the changes made by Napoleon. So what were the changes brought about in Europe after the defeat of Napoleon? The monarchy was restored and a new conservative order was created in Europe. Austria was given control of northern Italy. The German Confederation of 39 states set up by Napoleon was left untouched.